What's next for the Golden State Warriors after they missed out on a Lauri Markkanen trade this offseason, missed out on a Paul George sign-and trade this offseason, let Klay Thompson walk this offseason, and really brought in a roster that doesn't look too competitive out there in the Western Conference? That's the question that we're asking ourselves on Warriors today. I'm Tyler Smith. Why don't we just get right into the next steps for the Golden State Warriors after they missed out on a Lauri Markkanen trade this offseason? Well, here's a quick offseason recap. I kind of verbalized it for you just now, but to start, back in June, when right before free agency opened, Paul George had a decision to make whether to opt into his contract with the LA Clippers, his player option, or decline it and enter unrestricted free agency. Now, the talk was that he was going to accept his player option, then be traded over to the Golden State Warriors, in which he would sign a 4-year max extension with the Dubs. The Clippers ended up playing hardball. We'll talk about that more in a little bit, but decided not to send Paul George to the division rival Golden State Warriors. Then, next thing you know, a couple days later, Klay Thompson walks, signs with the Dallas Mavericks, and broke up the Splash Bros. So Klay Thompson moves on, and they get a couple players in return, some role-playing pieces, but nobody too flashy. And then for the rest of the offseason, Golden State had been involved in Lauri Markkanen trade rumors that never really materialized as much as somebody like myself or many of you thought. It never really got too close, and Lauri Markkanen ended up signing a 5-year, $238 million extension with the Utah Jazz after the August 6th deadline, making him ineligible to be traded for the 2024-25 NBA season. So there's an offseason recap of the bad that happened with the Golden State Warriors. Now make it known, if you think the Golden State Warriors roster needs improvement, this team to not be a bottom feeder in the Western Conference, like today's video, go on ahead and hit that thumbs up icon. Let's see if we can get 500 likes in today's video. If we get 500 likes, that'll tell Mike Dunleavy, Steve Kerr, Joe Lacob, the entire Warriors front office, that this roster needs improvement, and they're letting the twilight of Steph Curry's career pass by. Like today's video if you're frustrated and think the Warriors roster needs improvement. So here is a quote from Dalton Johnson of NBC Sports Bay Area, who says, "The draft is well in the past, so is free agency, and the Warriors' two biggest targets, Lauri Markkanen and Paul George, are no longer options. That leaves them with little room to swing a team-altering deal before the start of the upcoming season." And let me just say, Mike Dunleavy Jr. screwed himself. He pigeonholed himself with two targets, couldn't pull off either one. If you talk about Paul George situation and how that all went down, yeah, you can probably blame the Clippers for playing a little bit more hardball with Golden State there. There was reports that Golden State offered up Jonathan Kuminga to send over to Los Angeles for Paul George. So listen, if Golden State made a sizable offer for a guy like Paul George and the Clippers just didn't want to do it, they didn't want to send him to the in-state rival, then you just kind of have to roll with those punches and move on, which the Golden State Warriors did. But then they said they're not going to give up young talent for Lauri Markkanen, a guy who could really improve this roster, raise its ceiling, and make them a bona fide playoff team for 24-25. No, he says, let's not trade Brandin Podziemski, let's not trade Jonathan Kuminga, even though Utah wasn't really that interested in Kuminga. But the real kicker was that they wouldn't trade Brandin Podziemski for Lauri Markkanen. So now they're left with a crop of young talent around a 36-year-old Stephen Curry, and they don't really seem to be making big swing moves for the remainder of this offseason because there aren't that many names available. Now, names that are available, according to Shams Charania of The Athletic, Golden State really has no appetite for. Zach LaVine, Brandon Ingram. We've talked about Brandon Ingram and Zach LaVine here before on the channel, but if a deal was going to get done for one of those guys, I feel like it would have already happened by now. So it doesn't seem like Golden State will ever enter serious talks or discussions around trading for either one of these players. Both have their drawbacks. I mean, Zach LaVine, the injuries, the attitude, not really a winning basketball player up to this point in his career, but, an effective scorer nonetheless. Brandon Ingram, kind of the same thing, not as much the attitude, just like not really the most effective player, especially in a Steve Kerr offense that's three-point centric, that's movement centric. If you think about how he played in the 2020 Olympics a couple years ago, headed by Steve Kerr, Brandon Ingram was god-awful. I don't know if anybody remembers him getting clowned all summer long, but he was. He could not play in a Steve Kerr offense, so they're not going to go after either one of these guys. So it doesn't look like a big move, a big roster-altering move is going to be made before the start of this season or really during the beginning of the season unless we see a star become disgruntled. So here, Shams had more to say about Golden State's kind of actions here as the season approaches. We're already in the heat of August at this point. He said the Warriors have 14 players under contract for next season and feel comfortable entering training camp and the regular season as currently constructed, according to team sources, though they are expected to explore smaller scale deals more actively than a typical in August and September. Well, I get that the Warriors might feel comfortable, but I don't feel comfortable with this roster. This roster stinks. If you think about the team that they have right now in front of them, it just doesn't make sense. There's too much depth, which in the Golden State's case is not a good thing. You're filling this roster with B- and C+ players who, at the end of the day, aren't going to stack up against the talent that you have in a Minnesota Timberwolves, on an Oklahoma City Thunder, even a Dallas Mavericks where our boy Klay Thompson went off to play. You're just not going to. If you look at a potential starting five here, this wouldn't be my starting five, by the way, but this is a lineup that I think Steve Kerr might trot out there for first game opening night of the NBA season. Curry at the 1, Buddy Hield at the 2. You just paid him a little bit of money, so you might as well start him. Same kind of deal, though, with Andrew Wiggins. You're paying him a ton of money, over $25 million a year, so probably have to start him. Obviously, Draymond Green's going to stay in that lineup. And then Jonathan Kuminga playing over there at the 3 or the 4, depending on how Steve Kerr situates the wings. But this lineup, in my opinion, it's fine. It's whatever. I'm not super high on Buddy Hield as a 82-game long-term starter, a guy who's going to have to close games and play tight defense. I don't really see that a ton with Buddy Hield, but he is that shooting replacement that you needed when Klay Thompson left. Kuminga, you need him to take that huge jump, obviously. And then if we look at the bench rotation here, Brandin Podziemski kind of heads that unit. And just another sidebar, the fact that we're not trading a backup point guard for Lauri Markkanen, an all-star level player who could put up 25 a night, it boggles my mind. But I do think Brandin Podziemski could be a very good basketball player. You have DeAnthony Melton, who has been dealing with some back problems. I'm very skeptical about how his season is going to go coming off that injury last year. Didn't play too much. 38 games played, I believe, with Philly last season. Moses Moody, you hope for him to have an increased role in the rotation this year. I'm hoping for 20 minutes a game. Do I think I'm going to get 20 minutes a game for Moses Moody? That's yet to be seen. Steve Kerr has been very apprehensive in giving him a bigger role. Then you got Kyle Anderson, slow-mo, who you brought in this offseason to be a good ball mover, somebody who you can work out of the high post to facilitate, kick out to open shooters, and just be an all-around positive impact in the basketball court. And then Trayce Jackson-Davis, you hope he takes a second step. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of grasping at straws here with this Warriors roster. They are destined for a 9th place finish in the West, and that might even be generous. They finished the 10th seed last year. What about this roster screams to you that they're going to have some massive improvement this season? I just don't see it. And I'm not sure one singular move, like it could be for a Brandon Ingram or a Zach LaVine, puts them any higher. I think all the talent that was on the board for you this offseason, Paul George, Lauri Markkanen, you had to make big swings, and you decided to bunt. And guess what? The catcher caught the ball. You're out. And it just doesn't seem like Golden State has clear direction here like we thought they did at the beginning of the offseason, because the wheels have kind of come off. But do you think the Golden State Warriors need to make a trade? Be Mike Dunleavy for me right now. Do you think a trade is needed for this team to compete at all, to appease Steph Curry, to keep him in town? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Type Y for yes, type N for no. I want to hear from Dub Nation. Next, we're going to go through 3 Warriors trade targets that we could possibly see one of those smaller scale moves come to fruition here before the season, potentially at the beginning of the season, or all the way closer to the trade deadline. We're going to detail 3 guys that I think Golden State would be valuable to go pick up. But first, before we do, got to get you guys ripped out. Steph Curry Olympic merch, baby. Steph Curry playing in Paris with Team USA, and this could be the only chance for you to get some Olympic Team USA merch for your boy. Chatsports.com/CurryUSA. They got the blue. They got the white. Like I said, I'm thinking of getting myself one to rock here on the show. You're going to want to get yours as well. Chatsports.com/CurryUSA to get yours today. And if you can't forget that link, I'm going to put it in the comments and description of today's video to make it easy for you guys. Go get your Steph Curry Team USA merch right now. All right, so we're going to detail 3 Warriors trade targets that I think, according to Shams, could be these smaller scale moves that could actually impact this rotation, this roster, in a really positive way. Now, a little exposition before we start here. I do think that Golden State is in a position to make a big swing trade eventually. They have the assets to do it. But then again, Are they going to move their stance of not wanting to trade Brandin Podziemski? Are they going to move their stance of not wanting to trade Jonathan Kuminga, especially if those guys have really solid starts to the season? I don't know. What I do know is every season in the NBA, a star becomes disgruntled at some point. Does that mean he's going to get traded? No, but his name is going to come up at some point. I don't know who that star is going to be yet, but a star's name will come up, and he will be asking for a trade at some point. But we don't know who that is yet. I'm not going to speculate on who that is yet. We've talked about enough big names on the channel before. I think you guys are tired of that now. Let's go to some smaller scale deals here. Now, the first one we've talked about before, actually as recently as this week, Jonas Valanciunas. Now, when it comes to Valanciunas, he's going to be a guy who's going to fill a very big need on this Warriors roster. He's going to be a really solid rebounder and an underrated floor spacer over the last couple of seasons that he's spent in New Orleans and Memphis. Now he's with the Washington Wizards on a 3-year, $30 million deal. So he just signed this offseason, and the deal cannot be made until December. So that's the big thing you got to think about here when it comes to Jonas Valanciunas. You got to think, hopefully Golden State is in a position in December where they're fighting for the play-in, fighting for the playoffs, and this is a kind of needle-moving move in a sense that it takes them into the play-in or into the playoff standing scenario. I'm a big fan of Jonas Valanciunas. He gets a ton of baskets around the rim, great back-to-the-basket game. I know that's not Golden State's MO, but he provides that nonetheless, and a great rebounder, underrated playmaker, and a solid floor spacer. I'm in on Jonas Valanciunas if the time comes, the price is cheap, and Golden State really needs help in that front court come December. Now, another front court player, this one's a new name that we haven't really talked about at all here on the channel, and that's Wendell Carter Jr. of the Orlando Magic. And it's a new name completely off the dome here, but I love Wendell Carter Jr. Dating back to his days at Duke, you could see the flashes of him being a very, very good NBA player, and he's been that up to this point. In my opinion, he is this mini Al Horford-esque player where he affects shots at the rim, solid rim protector, really good floor spacer as well, close to 40% from three-point range at multiple spots around the floor. His above-the-break three-point percentage, if him and Steph ran the pick and pop together, it would be unbelievable, baby. But I think Wendell Carter can affect this Golden State roster in a lot of ways. They can play 5 out with having him on the floor. And you might ask, Wendell Carter Jr. is a very good player. The Magic are a young and up-and-coming team. Why would they even trade Wendell Carter Jr.? Well, the Magic made some moves this offseason. They did sign Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which is a good move for them. Nice veteran to get in the mix there for shooting and defense. But they also re-signed 2 centers on their roster, Mo Wagner and Goga Bitadze, for $11 million a year and $9 million a year. So the Magic are now paying 3 centers each more than $9 million a season. In my opinion, I just don't think that that's something that Orlando is looking to continue long-term, especially when you sign both of these guys in the offseason. Sounds like Wendell Carter Jr., who's potentially up for a payday over the next couple of seasons, could be expendable and could be sent to a team like Golden State. I'd love it if they did. Now, the last trade target of today's video is somebody we've heard about before and somebody who I think can affect this team in a positive way by both coming to the team and sending out what would need to be sent to Brooklyn to get Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, like I said, there's been rumblings about this trade. Brooklyn is looking to obtain more and more draft capital as the days go on, and they've been open about dealing Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, what would Dorian Finney-Smith provide for this Golden State roster? He'd be the quintessential 3-and-D player, one of the best wing 3-4 defenders in the NBA, and hits the corner 3 at a super high percentage. Playing for Brooklyn, he's kind of going to be playing that same role for Golden State. I'd honestly would consider putting him in the starting lineup if you have a guy like Andrew Wiggins in there. I hope that you would send Andrew Wiggins in a potential deal for Dorian Finney-Smith, and he would just slide right in to Wiggins' spot in the lineup. And an added incentive that could be coming with a Dorian Finney-Smith, like Brooklyn has tried to package together, is Cam Johnson, the sharpshooter. He is making $22 million a year, so that's why you would have to include an Andrew Wiggins in this deal. But Brooklyn has been trying to package these two guys together to get a couple of draft picks. Now, what would it take to get these two guys? What would Brooklyn be looking for? Well, here's the trade that I kind of conjured up here for Dorian Finney-Smith and Cam Johnson. They give up Andrew Wiggins. They give up Kevon Looney. They would have to give up Moses Moody, unfortunately, but you kind of get a 1-for-1 there with Cam Johnson and Moses Moody, and Cam Johnson's a better player based on what we've seen so far in his career, and then you throw in the first-round pick. They want 2 for these 2 guys, but I figure Moses Moody, throwing him in the deal, puts that first-round pick, and you could take 1 out. You send 1 first, you get this deal done. You get 2 really good wings to add to this Golden State rotation. But that'll do it for today's video. If you had to pick one of these players to trade for, is it Jonas Valanciunas? If so, type JV in the chat. If it's Wendell Carter Jr., type a WC down below. And if it's Dorian Finney-Smith, type a little DFS down in the comments section. I want to see who you guys think Golden State should add to this roster to make an improvement. That'll do it for today's video. Warriors Today by Chat Sports. Consider subscribing to the channel as we're bringing you the most up-to-date Warriors news, rumors, trade rumors, updates. Doesn't matter. Anything that comes out about your Golden State Warriors, you're going to find right here at Warriors Today by Chat Sports. YouTube.com/WarriorsTV. Hit that sub button for me. We'll see you next time. Go Dubs.